In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful. Assalamu alaikum. Today we will discuss about in detail geographical isolation, causes of geographical isolation, effects of geographical isolation, how geographical isolation leads to speciation, and then at the end, examples of geographical isolation. So let's start. What is geographical isolation? Geographical isolation occurs when a population of a species is separated by physical barriers and that preventing from interbreeding. What are the causes of geographical isolation? Several natural events and barriers can cause geographical isolation. The first one is the physical barriers, which include mountains, for example, Himalaya, separating different species of animals in India and China, rivers and lakes, for example, the Amazon River acting as a barrier for species in South America, oceans and seas, for example, Galapagos Islands, home to unique species like Darwin's finches. Deserts, for example, the Sahara Desert, isolating species in North and Sub-Saharan Africa. The second one is the natural disasters, which include earthquakes and volcanic eruptions that can split populations and create new land barriers. Glaciers and ice ages can also separate species by creating icy landscapes, and fire and sand movements also separate the populations. The third one is the climate change, which include rising sea level that can create islands and separate the populations, and forest fragmentation, for example, deforestation that can isolate species in patches of habitat. The geographical isolations may be wide range geographical isolations or short distance geographical isolation. In case of wide geographical isolation, for example, one species is found on mainland and other is found on oceanic islands. These two species have very large geographical isolation because oceanic islands present at several thousand miles in the oceans. The short distance geographical isolation may be due to catastrophic changes such as fire, sand movement, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, or by the process of huge landsliding. Effects of geographical isolation on inbreeding and outbreeding species. What is inbreeding species? Inbreeding species refer to mating of closely related individuals within a population. An outbreeding species refers to the mating of genetically unrelated or distantly related individuals within a population. So, in case of inbreeding population, even small geographical change is effective. But in case of outbreeding population, geographical isolation is not effective, especially especially of forest trees, which are pollinated by wind. So pollen grains of one species can travel many hundred miles by means of wind. So cross pollination may occur between two related species, and when there is no isolation, there is no distinctness of species consent. So there is no geographical isolation. How geographical isolation leads to speciation. The first step is separation. A population is physically divided. The second step is independent evolution. Each group adapts to its environment through natural selection, genetic drift, and mutations. The third step is reproductive isolation. Over generations, genetic differences accumulate, preventing interbreeding even if the populations reunite. The fourth step is new species formation. The isolated populations evolve into distinct species. This figure is showing the concept of microspecies or satellite species. So, how this species is formed? The middle region of a wide distributional area is more suitable for growth of population, while in periphery region there is extreme of environmental conditions. So, group of plants start isolating from one another due to intervening of unfavorable environmental conditions. After many years, they become differentiated from middle species and thus new species are produced on the peripheral region. Small group of plants in such peripheral region is known as microspecies or satellite species. These small populations develop favorable variations by undergoing mutation, recombination, selection, and isolation. These are the examples of geographical isolations. The classic example of very long geographical isolation is that of platanus species. There are two species of platanus, a Platanus orientalis and Platanus occidentalis. Platanus orientalis is found in eastern Mediterranean region in Turkey, and Platanus occidentalis is found in eastern United States. The distance between two species almost thousands miles. These two species of Platanus live in habitats where ecology differ by very low temperature and snowfall. So both of these species are called vicarious species. What does mean vicarious species? Closely related allotropic species are called vicarious species. So they are interfertile. It means these two species are fully fertile with one another, although these species are geographically isolated for millions of years. It means in these species, geographical isolation could not produce or induce reproductive isolation. The second example is catalpa species. There are two species of Catalpa, Catalpa ovata that is found in China and Catalpa bignonoides that is found in United States. But they have similar habitats, very low temperature found at high altitude, but they are highly interfertile with one another. Although there is long geographical isolation, but still there is no genetic isolation. The third example is Darwin's finches. The finches on the Galapagos Island evolved into different species due to isolation on different islands. Each species adapted to different food sources like seeds, insects, flowers through beak variations.